Much appreciated. They've got the old picture of me up here as well now. Look, I look like an overstuffed hamster. All right, well, welcome.
Yeah.
You all remember Marco?
Yeah.
Good. We are going to have a conversation, as it says. Oh, a clicker. My kingdom for a clicker. Doth we hath a clicker? Doth we have a clicker? We have a clicker. Yay. Thank you very much. We have clicker.
Yeah.
We're going to ask the question from an analog and a human standpoint and a digital standpoint, what happens when intelligence wakes up and wants to have a conversation? What happens from our standpoint? So we're going to basically talk about a couple of different things. We're going to have a conversation with Marco about artificial intelligence. We're going to basically talk a little bit of history. We're going to go through some of the old movies. And then we're going to talk about basically why it's not all about the machine, why the human is also part of this whole conversation. Then we're going to talk about humans. And then we're going to basically put some final thoughts up there. Sound good?
Yeah.
All righty. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's have the conversation. I want your thoughts on it.
So artificial intelligence is definitely going to be very useful for humanity, but it definitely needs some regulation because otherwise it may, literally overthrow us or cause severe problems in the cyber industry. Because, AI is an expert in everything, so
Absolutely.
It's very easy for it to hack into something if it wanted to.
Yep, totally. So here's a question for all of you. How many of you have walked the halls and been told by all the vendors and suppliers out there that they have an artificial intelligence solution? I know I have. Most of us have. Yeah, exactly. We're going to put that to the test. What we're going to do is look back at history. How many of you remember number 5 is alive? When number 5 is alive came up, number 5 was looked upon as something good. Reasoning, learning, planning, and creativity. The challenge we had is 2 years before that, we had Skynet. This was actually 2 years before our friend over there. When we start looking at reasoning, well, Skynet didn't want to reason. Skynet had one idea, which was basically to eliminate us all. The learning, it was kindergarten level. Let's face it, that versus us, it should have won. Planning, not really. And creativity, not really. So it was one of those things where, when we started to take a look at what we had versus what we're going to have, we have to take a look and see how artificial intelligence has evolved. You want to have a conversation? So we start taking a look at the two types.
Yeah, of course, there's general and narrow. Narrow is when an AI is very good at a single thing. For example, creating images. There are some AIs that are very good at that, but if you ask it to do anything else, it just can't. Instead, general AIs would be something like ChatGPT. It basically knows everything. It's an expert in a lot of things, and it can help you to do a lot of things.
Totally. So in other words, if we ask IBM's Big Blue to play chess, it's going to win. But if we ask IBM's Big Blue to make a cup of tea, it's going to curl up in the corner. Whereas if we ask a general system, it'll give us options for tea. It'll tell us what kinds of teas maybe we like because of the data it's had. It might not do, though, because sometimes it isn't always necessarily about the technology. We have to take a step that we have to look at the humans in this. For those of us that grew up in this industry, it's people, process, and then technology. Which is where we get to a bit of a problem. Because as humans, we've tended to persecute anything that we didn't understand, or we blame the issues on things that we don't understand. We gave it life, we took it off the reins, we told it to go forth, and we're talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
We handed it to billions of people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't give it instructions. We didn't help those people understand, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Here's the other problem with humans. We trust. This is why I love this generation. They ask questions. We have conversations. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's very easy for us to be misled by AI. Cause like raise your hand if you double check things that AI tell you.
We ask, and the nice thing
Not
about...
many people.
Yeah. Here's what I like about this. This is where we could all learn from. He asks questions. He challenges. We tend not to do that, and as we talk through this, we'll talk more about it. This is why, unfortunately, within our own industry, the scams and the attacks, people take billions from us around the globe. This is why we lose 22.5 million pieces of information every single day, globally. Because unfortunately, we haven't brought the person into this. And we're about to hand an intelligence system that can mimic me, and he's been mimicking systems in what, a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. Like, for example, Apple has also recently released a feature where you can say a few sentences and it's going to mimic your voice perfectly. So yeah, I mean, everyone is vulnerable to this. And we've all seen those like YouTube shorts and TikTok videos of like people speaking in AI voices.
Yeah, so that happens. We're not looking at hours to train, we're looking at seconds and minutes. We're looking at he and I talking for a few minutes together, and it mimics us. So the question becomes one of, how do we teach humanity, who we've failed for the last 30, 40, or 50 years, to question more? In our technology arena, we haven't done a good job, so how do we change this? Because the other challenge we have is that I would argue we also are divided. As a CISO, and as vendors and sales and marketing in our industry, as a CISO, I have one job. I have a job to protect. I have a job to protect my organization. I have a job to look after the next generation. I also, unfortunately, have to protect my organization from so many of the vendors and the marketing and the sales and the systems. How do we do that? How do we not fight against each other? How many of us work or have walked into companies where the IT department stands here and goes, oh, I don't want to talk to him. He's weird. He's got blue hair. He's in security. I don't want to talk with him. And the security goes, I don't want to deal with him because he's a womble and an idiot. We have that, but yet here we are. We talk. We communicate. How many of you are working in organizations where there are silos and no bridges between those silos? The nice thing about it, from an intelligence system, it strips that away. But we have to trust it. Now, as trust, we have to ask, does it have biases? So this is directly from our wonderful world of ChatGPT. Admittedly, I might have modified and played with it afterwards, and I've got it to eat itself. But I asked it a question. Do we think it has a bias? What do you think? Do we think it's got a bias?
Yes, I mean, all data is biased in some way against some people, so yeah. I mean, everything has to have a bias. It's almost impossible to have something with no bias.
Yeah, because the question is whose hands were on the keyboards? There's an infamous one. There is a very well-known car company that's in the digital era. When it first rolled out its cars, they had a problem in the United States. It ran over people of color because they hadn't trained the engine to recognize a shadow versus a person. Why? Because the people on the keyboards didn't think about it. Not a good thing. So do we think it's got a bias? Well,
yeah.
Probably yes. And where is that? That's all in the data. So speaking of data, let us talk about the data that you all have. First question for everybody in here. How many of you could actually say you know where all of your data is? Anybody? Nobody. Yet our job is to manage the risk and the probability. Our job is to protect it. So how do we know what data we have and how good the data is? Do you have data lakes? Or do you have data swamps? Talk to me about data swamps.
Yeah, I mean, it's data in like unsorted, unorganized data, which, yeah, may or may not be accurate.
Absolutely. Think about this. If you don't know what data you have and you don't know where it is completely, how do you know that you have control of your data? We talked about this earlier. Remember, we were talking about if I teach the machine 2 + 2 = 4, but you don't want me to do that, what do?
I just teach it that 2 + 2 = 10 or something.
Exactly. And I trust the machine because the machine is telling me that 2 + 2 = 10, and I don't ask it another question. So if 2 + 2 = 10, I have another question for you. How many of you, if when you opened your car door and your car said, hi, instead of it pinging and dinging, it said, hey, I'll give you a 95% chance of getting to your destination. How many of you would get in the car? Good luck. But we do that with data. When we use that data, we don't ask another question. We don't look at the data. We don't ask if it's been validated. We just trust implicitly and off we go. Interesting. So then, who's checking the data? Who is looking at that data? I hand Marco all of my data and I say, hey, do me a favor, look after my data, and I'm out of here. You're up on stage. Marco, what are you going to do with my data?
Not that much.
No?
Probably.
Gonna put
I
some
mean,
stuff
I mean, depending on the type of data, I could exploit it.
Yeah. You can exploit it. You
Yeah.
can mess with it. You can
Yeah.
make it turn 2 + 2 = 7, 6,
Yeah.
5.5.
Yeah.
But this is the
basically.
question. When we teach the intelligent system about what we want to learn from it, who's validating that very data that we're training it with, and who's continually validating that data?
Humans.
Yeah, exactly. And are we flawed? Yes.
Yes.
So who's watching the watchers? Let's talk about humans for a second. We asked it, does it lie? Now, what I like about this one is in some ways, as it says on here, it puts a disclaimer. Absolutely, I'm programmed to provide accurate information, and I can't lie. Oh, I'll talk about that in a second. But my answers are based on the data I'm provided. So if I want to get a certain data set out, I'm going to give it certain types of data. And who's going to validate and trust that data? AI systems are designed for certain tasks. Chatbots might be exactly programmed to lie. Hello, yes, I am a young lady somewhere in the Middle East. No, you're not. You're an aged old 50-year-old guy who's sitting at the computer pretending to be that.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, there's AIs that are literally programmed to do so. Like, I don't remember the name of this website, but it was a website where you could, where like an AI, it was for testing. Basically, it's, human or not, there you go, I remember the name. Basically, it either connected you to other people to chat with or an AI, and the AI pretended to be a person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's AIs that have done that before and AIs that are doing that now.
Yet we still trust that intelligent system. Not only do we trust the intelligent system, some of us come from an adversarial AI background. Our job is to build a program so that that intelligence does lie, so that it eats itself, so that when a vendor out there tells you that their endpoint is immutable and wonderful and can protect you, no, we teach it to lie so it doesn't even trust itself and shuts everything down. We did that about 2 months ago. This is too easy still. And here's where it gets interesting, and we'll have this conversation. When we look back in the history of technology and security, we've buried our heads. when it came to bring your own device, or BYOD, we decided we didn't want to deal with that. You know, it wasn't going to be a thing and it never happened, yet we're all wandering around with phones and technology and flippers.
Yeah.
Lots of flippers and lots of fun. We're walking with the technology, and yet we have the ability to take that technology no matter when and where. We ignored it. Now, with an intelligent system that has the ability to lie, that has the ability to do what we think we want it to do, we cannot ignore that. We have to not just learn and understand, but we also have to basically look at our entire industry and go, you tell me this, I need to be able to question this. Which means we need to talk in a different language. It means that I can't just stand here and talk about acronyms. It means I can't just stand here and have a conversation about technology when I need to talk business. It means I need to turn around and say, hey, what do you think about languages and how we speak to people?
Yeah, for example, like I've seen this a lot in the cybersecurity community. Even when people are like speaking to people outside the community, they speak in very, very technical terms, which most people are not going to be able to understand.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We have to take a step back, look at the intelligent systems that we're building, and have the conversations that everybody can understand. Which brings me to this one. Penetration testing and security assessments. Let's start with the easy one. If you were to walk up to the average human on the streets and go, hello, I'd like to penetrate you. That is not something, yeah, I know, I've just violated all the rules, I'm sorry. That's not something that we should be doing. If I then turn around and say, hey, I'm going to do it with Kali, gotcha. If I'm going to do it with Kali, the goddess of death and destruction, and I'm bringing pineapples and ponies with me, these are not conversations that we should have with people. What we should do is have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a conversation.
Yeah.
Go for it. We also need to be held accountable. Gotcha.
Yeah, you got me there.
We're going to be held accountable. My predecessor stood up here and we talked about regulations and regulatory bodies and SEC. To me, we have to be accountable. Not just accountable to each other, and not just accountable to everything else, but accountable to this generation. Because at some point, I'm going to want to retire, and I'm going to hand the baton and say, hey, it's all yours. And he's going to look at me and go, what the heck did you do? That's my thing. Where do we go?
Pretty much.
Yeah. And this is the other one, question more, trust less. And I'm watching the clock, so I'm going to race through these. But, as we all know, Black Hat is recording this, and I'll make sure if anybody needs the slides, get hold of either of us, and we'll make sure the slides are available. Here's what I want every single person here to do, and every single person that's watching the video as well. Take these next couple of slides, and then arm yourself as you talk to the vendors.
Oh, the vendors are going to hate you for this.
Oh, I know. This is going to be so... Every single vendor in there is going to lynch me, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
First question. AI is cool, and it's got shiny bits, but do you need it to solve your problem? And if so, why? And this isn't just technology going, hey, this is really cool, I want to get it. Hey, no, this is a business conversation. Do we have enough data to train it? Do we have enough information that we can help it learn and understand? And if we don't, how do we get there? Do we have domain expertise in this field? Here's a good example. I had a flipper. I have several flippers. I had a spare one. I'm like, I know somebody that can use it. I've used mine a little bit. I don't have enough time. So what I did is I went, hey, I have a flipper. Something about the flipper.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool device. It can transmit radio, infrared, so it can control TVs. Had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, then it can control NFC tags, RFID, eye buttons even. So yeah, it's a very advanced device. Anyone can use this. I mean, it's literally a menu. It's not very hard. Like, there's no coding involved unless you want to have coding involved. It's very easy. I mean, there's a lot of repositories on GitHub and stuff with already pre-written tools. Like, I wrote my own custom tools for this one, but yeah.
So, user, domain expertise. Simple way of demonstrating it. Next one, how are you going to deliver AI? I'm realizing I'm running out of time, so I'm going to run through these quickly. Who's training the solution? Is it trained on your data or is it trained on somebody else's data? How effective are you doing it? Do you have humans in the loop? Because if you're just trusting that model and it tells you you've got a 95% chance of maybe making it to the conversation, well then maybe you need the human in the model. Is it auditable? If it gives you an answer of 2 + 2 = 10, well, how do you know it and how do you trust it? Who's liable if the solution fails? If I sell Marco something and he looks at me and goes, hey, why the hell did it tell me that 2 + 2 = 10? Is it my fault? Did he not put it in properly, which is how we currently do things? Where's it stored? How do we train it? Why did you choose the particular model for AI? And can you explain how it works? Some more questions, and again, I'll run through these. These are obviously all being recorded, and we'll make sure you can get the slides. What rules, what precision, what qualifications? You get the idea. These are questions to ask every single organization that says they have an AI solution for you. Probably the most important one.
Squirrels.
Yeah, have to have squirrels.
Of course.
How much training and how much time and what's the return on the investment? So some final thoughts. We handed ChatGPT to 5.3 billion people, and we didn't give them any rules, we didn't help them, and we didn't teach them. We handed a live hand grenade to somebody and went, hey, all yours. He is going to take it to pieces, rebuild it, and have fun with it. Fight mode.
Yeah, which is, well, what people did. I mean, I've seen a ton of malware. There's even some on GitHub, which basically uses AI to adapt its strategy to their specific system. Like, I've even made one. It's super easy to make. I mean, you just need access to an API and like $10. It's incredibly easy. It works really well. Like, it's some incredible stuff. It's very dangerous, though, for systems and companies.
Yeah. That's fight mode. Flight mode, I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to touch it, which means I'm going to be influenced. And freeze mode. There are still people sitting there looking at ChatGPT, wondering what to do with it. We didn't help 5.5 billion people. So, hopefully I spelled this right. Finally, that's what I want to say. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the Black Hat team here. Thank you to Marco and Marco's mom. And thanks to everybody for being here. I love you all.